and welcome to the second episode now of New York State of Mind. Mitch Broder here with Pat Tartero. I believe we're recording this on Monday, July 27th, so our first episode should have just dropped tonight, so we hope you enjoyed that. And we got a good show planned for you here for our second season. New background, too. I know it's a little darker in Pat's house. I'm now not in my room, no dog behind me either. So that's a little change of
A
scenery
little
here.
disappointing. A little disappointing after the first episode. It's all right.
Yeah, it's a little late for her. For those you know, now we're recording this right now at 10:50 at night. So she's tired. She's sleeping, as as we now know she loves to do. But anyways, let's get right into it. And the big news, no question about it, for today is the news about the Marlins. As 11 players test positive for COVID-19, two coaches as well, and yet they played a game against the Phillies this weekend. And a lot of people have now concerns about sports moving forward. And I think that with this incident, it's definitely a little nerve wracking to see, as right when we thought maybe sports are gonna come back and be okay. We see an outbreak, but the more news that gets unraveled about this situation, I think the worse it more looks on baseball's part, more so than just trying to play sports during this global pandemic. Basically, there's reports coming out that the Marlins traveled to Philadelphia, understanding that they already had two players test positive for COVID, had I believe another 2 to 4 players test positive once they got to Philadelphia, and yet they decided to play the game anyways, based off of a team meeting, which is not a part of Major League Baseball's COVID-19 protocols on what happens when players test positive. And a lot of people are scrutinizing the Marlins and Major League Baseball for not following the rules that were created to essentially prevent this from happening. Because now, the Phillies, they have to quarantine, and their game against the Yankees has been postponed. It's a domino effect. And I think that the next 48 hours are going to really show, hey, like, what happens when essentially the worst case scenario. I mean, COVID is spreading amongst a team, and they just played a game.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see.
I mean, can you say you're surprised though that
I
this is
think
maybe a little too early? Maybe you weren't expecting it on the fourth day, but can you say like I don't know. I feel like it's just a little weird to me because when you say that you're gonna play a season during a global pandemic, I feel like the MLB should have looked a little more prepared for this situation because I feel like if you're playing a sport like baseball, where maybe it's not the biggest contact sport, they're still making contact with each other, slides at the plate and just in the dugout and stuff. Like, I feel like at some point, like guys are going to test positive, especially when you don't have a bubble. So it's very interesting because it's a very tricky situation for the MLB. But I just wish that they had a little more. I wish I'm saying that. I wish they were more like prepared. They just were coming off as more prepared because I can't say I'm surprised about this. Like when you can say you're gonna continue a season, players are going to test positive, and I guess one of the options that you have is to, like you've said in the past, treat it like an injury, and that player is just sort of out for the 2 to 4 weeks or however long. But with this Marlins situation, now like I saw on Twitter today, they were saying that a doctor was saying that the whole team should be quarantined for the next 2 weeks. Not that one game should get postponed, the rest of the players should be able to play. Like this is a major problem because they could say that they're following guidelines all they want, but if the players are playing games and they're supposed to be quarantining according to doctors and the CDC guidelines, then it's just kind of hypocritical on the league's part.
And I think what is so like disappointing about this is that like I think that if you're not going to do the bubble, like you said, like players are going to test positive. It's just inevitable. You
Yeah.
know, even if you follow all the correct, protocols, even if these players who first contracted the virus were, masking, social distancing, staying at home, as much as possible, you could still just get COVID, somehow, some way. It happens. But what I think makes this uh, really disappointing and upsetting is that what I think is intended with these non-bubble sports is if a player or two test positive, it's okay. We quarantine them. We test all the players, coaches, and personnel, and just make sure everyone's okay to continue moving forward. And they kind of just dug it under the rug and just let it spread. And that's the thing, is that when it spreads amongst a team, it's a whole nother ballgame,
Yeah.
and that's what is really, tough to see, because ultimately, I think if they had done the protocols correctly, right, if those two players had dinged up, it would have been, everyone stay, we're going to maybe stay away from the facility, daily testing, keeping an eye on symptoms. And I think that, okay, maybe a game against the Phillies this weekend, yeah, that would have gotten postponed. But, we could have been sitting here thinking, okay, like, hey, they got two guys who have tested positive, but, the rest of the team's totally fine. They all are negative. Let's move on with the season. But instead, they let it kind of turn into this outbreak. And now, I mean, who knows what the next steps are going to be. I think what will make this situation turn into a true disaster is if players from the Phillies start testing positive.
Yeah.
That's when this gets into the conversation of, do we have a season? I think saying cancel the season now is a little premature. I think that you got to let things play it out. But if any players in Philadelphia test positive, it's a huge problem on baseball's hands.
Yeah. Agreed.
So with that news, obviously the other major sport that is not implementing the bubble is the NFL. So, like, Pat, what do you think about the NFL? And now that we've seen this happen, with baseball, about their chances of playing a sport, considering that football is a much more at-risk sport, a lot more contact, guys, breathing, sweating, on top of each other, a longer season. I mean, more players. I mean, what do you think that this is a bad sign for the NFL, or do you think that, this is just kind of an isolated incident for Major League Baseball?
I mean, obviously, it doesn't look good, obviously, for the NFL right now, just given the news. But for me, I don't think this really changes anything because I don't think if you're gonna have a season, like, guys are gonna test positive. It doesn't change anything for me. I think the NFL knows that if they have a season, guys will test positive, no matter if they're the guys on the ends of the bench or starting quarterbacks. So that's potentially a loss for them, losing star players. But I think at the end of the day, it just comes down to what they're doing. They obviously can't have a bubble. It's not feasible to fit however many players there are in the league in the NFL into one bubble for however many months. But if they could have daily testing and everyone is actually following the guidelines, they can maybe devise some sort of system where if someone does test positive or if a team does test positive and they have to quarantine or something, it's going to be very tricky. But I can't say that yesterday's news or today's news really kind of casts a shadow on the season yet, just simply because we knew this was going to happen. It's more about how the MLB is able to handle it and then how they go from there.
Yeah, and I think, just like you said, the NFL, the bubble for them, it just wasn't possible with that many people,
Yeah.
6 months at the minimum. It's just, I think, a little too much to ask for these players. Understandably so. They don't want to be away from their families for that long.
Yeah, no.
Um, but in the end of the day, it is going to be a two-way street, I think, for baseball and football moving forward, which is the players are going to have to be really responsible. And they're going to have to make sure that they're not doing anything that they shouldn't be doing, basically, which inevitably there's going to be players that are going to screw up.
Yeah.
But you got to hope that majority of the players take the correct precautions. And additionally, the teams and the leagues need to be transparent and can't act like, oh, it's no big deal. We just a player tested positive. Hey, if someone tests positive, you got to jump on that and test, contact trace. That's how people say, where someone gets it, that's how you can minimize the spread. Is just remove that person and just test. And in order for the NFL and MLB to have, just complete seasons, that's going to have to happen.
Yeah.
So hopefully, these players and are responsible. And I was talking to a friend about this, and I think it's kind of an interesting idea is that with how long there's been no sports and everything everyone's been through with this pandemic, you know, sports is kind of something that we've all been looking forward to, kind of a distraction. And I think that the players also need to kind of put, and the teams as well, have to understand that they're kind of playing for something almost bigger than themselves this season. I mean, for a lot of people, this is an escape from what has been a tough, several months here. And I think that the players got to realize that, obviously, clubbing's all fun and whatnot, but they're playing for a lot more than just any other season, with here in 2020.
And also, just to add to that, you think about the implications potentially not having a season will have on the salary cap. I mean, I saw a notification today. I can't remember the exact number, but it said that with no fans in attendance, NFL owners are going to be losing like a significant amount of their revenue. I mean, not having a season, the players are going to want to have a season just because of the implication that it will have like in the future.
Right.
So, yeah.
And I also think on top of all that we just kind of talked about, the last factor of this, which is something that I think that the more games that are played, the better idea we're going to have about this is what it's like for these teams that are currently playing in hotspots. Miami right now is the epicenter of the COVID-19 pandemic, and the Marlins, the Dolphins. I mean, how is that going to even impact games? Because what has been, very interesting, I think, about this pandemic is how it's affected different parts of the country so drastically differently. Where, for example, here in Western New York, in Buffalo, Rochester, the positive rate is like 1.6%. And in Miami-Dade County, it's 35%, and how that's going to, affect things, because I've even seen people, saying, because I know the Blue Jays are playing here,
Yeah.
and the Dolphins are supposed to be there, or not the Dolphins, excuse me, the Marlins are supposed to be their home opener, and there are people in Buffalo who are kind of concerned about the Marlins coming, just because they don't want their community to be at risk by them coming. So there's going to be a lot of things that I think, baseball is kind of going to be the guinea pigs at, and I think these non-bubble leagues are going to have to sit and really just observe and figure out what did they do right, what did they do wrong, and how can we, implement this for our leagues, because this is going to happen, ultimately. And this is going to be a challenge with this season. And, we're going to see, what these leagues kind of are all about, because player safety essentially is the biggest, factor here, really. So it should be interesting. But, definitely discouraging news regardless of what procedures were taken, for today from baseball.
Yeah, well, I sure hope there's an NFL season, partly because of the trade that just went down a couple days ago,
Yes.
2 days ago or yesterday. The Jets traded Jamal Adams in a fourth-round pick to Seattle for Bradley McDougald, a first-round pick, another first-round pick, and a third-round pick. Mitch, what were your initial reactions, and how do you think this will affect both teams going forward?
So initially, I was a little surprised, because even though I know that the relationship between Adams and the Jets had deteriorated just so much this offseason, I still felt like that there was just no way they let him go. That being said, they got an unbelievable haul.
Yeah.
And I mean, 2 first-round picks. Bradley McDougall's a solid safety. I mean, he's no Jamal Adams, but that's a solid, reliable starter.
Yeah, and you pair him with Marcus May as well.
Right, and they drafted Ashton Davis out of Cal, who is a player that a lot of people really like. So, I think that The Jets, I think, got a shocking amount and way more than I think anyone would have anticipated. I mean, that's we're talking now in the same category of like what Khalil Mack, the compensation that was dealt for him, Jalen Ramsey, Laramie Tunsil. I mean, 2 first-round picks is big time. On top of that, a third and a starting player. I mean, you can't blame the Jets for making that trade. Um, for Seattle, we'll see if that really, how big of an impact it was. I think last year showed, with Minka Fitzpatrick, that sometimes shelling a first-round pick for a kind of a positionless defender, if your defense is struggling, that can be, a huge difference maker. But, the compensation is
Are
insane.
you saying the Jets won the trade?
So
Because that's
hear me
what
out
it
on this.
sounds like.
I thought about this for a little bit. Hear me out on this. The trade face value. Did they win the trade? I think you could say yes. They do need to hit on those draft picks because if they miss on those draft picks, it's all for nothing. But the overall situation, they lost because I think that the message that was sent
Yeah,
about Jamal
that's what I
Adams
was gonna get to as well.
was really bad for players thinking about maybe signing with the Jets in the future. Because Joe Douglas, although I do think he knows how to scout, I think he knows how to draft. He kind of got exposed as a negotiator a little bit. That they were, that he sent so many mixed signals to Jamal Adams, who's a guy that, frankly, should be a Jet for the rest of his career. Should have been a Jet.
Yeah,
I mean, that was a top 10 pick that they hit out of the ballpark. I mean, he exceeded expectations already. I mean, people say he's the best safety in football right now, and he's such a leader on that team, exactly. And they just shipped him. And on top of that, he really, I mean, unsurprisingly exposed, Adam Gase, who once again has just proven that there's no one better driving, there's no one better at driving great players off their team like Adam Gase. Just add Jamal Adams to the huge list of guys. Um, so I think that the Jets made the best out of a situation that they ultimately screwed up really bad. So if that makes sense, that was kind of my thinking on it.
yeah. Okay. There's so many areas to start from, but I'll just say, first of all, I don't think anyone necessarily won the trade because I think this is actually a good trade for both teams because of the situations that they're in. The Jets obviously get to build their foundation and then one day maybe make a trade like this where they could add a superstar because they think they're in contention because that's exactly what Seattle thinks because obviously they made the NFC, not the NFC championship,
Divisional.
divisional. They were very close to winning that game. They obviously still have Russell Wilson. So they're going to be in playoff contention as long as he's healthy. You get a guy like Jamal Adams. He's a generational talent at safety. You can move him all around the field. And Pete Carroll has a tradition of working well with DBs. So I could see why Seattle made the trade, obviously. And then for the Jets, they get a safety to replace him and a bunch of picks. So it was a good trade for both teams. My issue, I tweeted this too. My issue is more about, like you said, the message that the Jets sent to not just potential free agents, but also just to their team. It's mind blowing to me that you look around the league and there's so many guys who have had an issue with Adam Gase, and the face of your franchise goes to the media, whether it's professional or not. He goes to the media and he speaks about how Gase is a terrible leader and all these things. And people were saying that Jamal Adams was wrong for saying that. But like at the end of the day, is he wrong? Like, like is what he's saying wrong? Like there's a lot of good reason for him to say that based on other claims around the league from other players, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was the same deal with the Dolphins. A lot of
Yeah,
players
like Jarvis.
after they got traded from Miami were not afraid to let what they thought on Adam Gase be heard.
And
Especially Jarvis Landry in particular.
yeah,
I think it's. I mean, I I think Adam Gase is one of the worst head coaches in football for that reason. I mean, he can't lead. He's proved it.
And when Jamal Adams is saying that, he's right. Everything that he said when he came out and spoke to the media about negatively about the Jets, he was right. Like I couldn't blame him for saying any of that, especially when this Adam Gase has a track record of not working well with other players. And you're like, I just have a problem with this because the Jets are sending a message to their fan base and to their players that we're choosing Adam Gase over the generational talent that we drafted a couple years back. Because we both know I don't think Adam Gase is going to be here long term. Do you think he is in New York? Do you think his stay is much longer?
I don't think so. I think that this season is going to be kind of his make or break year. If they have another disappointing season, Sam Darnold doesn't take, the steps forward that people are still hoping he can, if it's the same old Adam Gase we see every year, which is get off the terrible starts and then just win enough at the end of the season to like maybe keep his job. I mean, listen, 7-9 is not going to do anything for a franchise. And I think that if it's another bad season by Gase, if the Jets don't have a winning record this season, I think he's got to go
Yeah.
because they got some players on that team, even without Jamal Adams. They
Yeah.
still got some good football players. Now, I saw this get tweeted, and I can't remember by who. It might have been Jim Graziano. But he was saying, what do you think Sam Darnold's thinking right now? Like, because here he is going to his pivotal year 3, which we've talked about is big time season
Yeah.
for these young quarterbacks, where they show whether they got it or not. And he's got this horrible situation with the head coach. Didn't, get a ton of help offensively. And not to mention, their defense, which I still think does play a big part in developing on quarterbacks, getting them the ball back and good positions and bailing them out if they make, bad mistakes. Essentially lost the heart and soul of it, the defense. I mean, what do you think Sam Darnold's thinking? Because that's got to be just painful to watch, such an important part of your team just get shipped away like that.
Absolutely. It blows my mind. I know Jamal wanted out, but you're choosing Adam Gase over a safety like that who plays linebacker and although he
Right.
doesn't even play a position, he just plays defense. Just
Right. I
plays
mean,
defense.
yeah. I mean, the guy had 6.5 sacks last season. I mean,
You can't trade it. You can't trade him over that in my opinion. I don't
right.
know, man. Jets blow my mind.
Right. Just Jets are gonna Jets, as they say. So, speaking of players acting out a little bit, no player seemed to have really embodied that any better than Mr. Lou Williams, who made headlines for. It honestly didn't even seem real. It's like a joke. It's like a parody. Like someone was thinking, man, that'd be funny if a player did this. But for those who are unaware, so Lou Williams of the Los Angeles Clippers, who's a pivotal piece of their team, left the bubble to supposedly get chicken wings from a strip club. He
Well,
claims he only left the bubble for 20 minutes. It was just to pick up an order. But nonetheless, it is truly, I think, one of the most bizarre things I've ever stumbled across on Twitter reading about. I just didn't even know what to say about this. Yeah, just wow.
I'm trying to read his Twitter right now. Did he actually only leave for 20 minutes?
I saw he was saying that he only left for 20 minutes and that people are overreacting and that it wasn't that big a deal. He might have deleted the tweet. I think I saw it earlier today, but that's coming from him, of course. So who knows? But in the meantime, I don't know what the hell he's thinking.
I mean, people were saying it's a personal matter, and listen, personal matter, leave the bubble. However, That does not mean on the way back you should stop at a gentleman's club and enjoy some chicken wings. Even if you're just getting it to go, man, just get back in the bubble. I mean, to me, this is more funny than it is like concerning. Just because the NBA right now, Adam Silver's killing it. Everything's been working perfectly. They contain the virus. Lou Will's gonna have to test positive, I think, twice in a row before he's allowed back
Right.
in. And I'm assuming this will be handled. And honestly, it's great for me because the Lakers play the Clippers on Thursday, and they won't have Lou Williams now. So
Right, and that's the thing that people are just sitting there like kind of baffled by because it's like the NBA, like this is not the time to leave the bubble, right now. I mean, like you said, personal's personal. Of course, if you got to handle your personal matters, go for it. But not the best look picking up wings from a club, when you're supposed to be playing a game in 3 days. That means the season's back on. It means a lot. I mean, especially for those two teams who are, atop the Western Conference right now. I mean, just what a bizarre, just random thing.
did you see the Kendrick Perkins and Lou Will banter on a
Yes, I did.
back and forth exchange?
I did see that. Yes, Kendrick Perkins, man. I don't know if I'd say that. I mean,
He said, for those of you who don't know, Kendrick Perkins said it's disturbing when a rookie in Zion Williamson can act more mature than NBA vet Lou Williams. And Lou Williams proceeded to respond and said, 15 years in this business, and the most dirt you have on my name is stopping to get hot wings during a pandemic. Perk, shut up and stop laughing and saying it's just TV when you run into me too. So obviously he had to add a little flavor at the end. This tweet got a lot of likes and a lot of retweets. So I guess he won the exchange, you could say. But I just think it's pretty funny. I love Kendrick Perkins on ESPN. That's the best ad that they've had in a while.
yeah. Kendrick Perkins is quite a personality. He's an entertaining guy to listen to. But yeah, I don't know, weird. But like you said though, but just even comparing, MLB to NBA. I mean, think about it. The biggest issue the NBA had is a player picking up some hot wings, leaving. But got to give them credit. That bubble has worked well, and I've actually thought the TV viewing for it has been really good. Like, I think the atmosphere they've created there is
and like they've done a pretty good job. Like they play some music. The players get really hype on the bench on the sideline. Like it's a decent atmosphere. Like the court looks cool.
yeah.
So they got the pools and the slides around everywhere. I'm just really excited for the season to actually resume on Thursday because, like you said, the scrimmages have actually been getting a lot of TV time. So
Right, and it's been fun to watch a couple of these random players. I mean, guy that I got to watch a little bit, which I haven't watched, and I mean, it feels like an eternity's Bull, who everyone is
yeah,
getting really excited over. But it's been kind of fun to watch him because he was such a unique player, and the fact that his Oregon career was so short-lived, and he's just been kind of stashed away in the G League. I mean, it's fun to get to watch some of these guys. I mean, the Nuggets had that all big lineup that they were putting out there.
lineup.
Right. It's been kind of fun just to kind of even just watch just some interesting, out of the box things going on. And now that we got that little taste in our mouths, the real show is going to be back. And I think that, there's going to be some really fascinating, teams, I think, that are going to really change the standings, I think, in both conferences. Because I think a lot of these teams are going to be more ready and prepared than others. So, but
I can't wait, dude. I'm so excited.
yeah, that will be good. That'll be tons of fun, and it's a good thing to have NBA TV too. All those games are just nonstop, so that should be really awesome when that returns. So the NFL is doing their top 100 players list, Pat, which they do every year. So I believe they got through 140 because they started yesterday, and I think today they're ending on 40. Now, it is just a list ranked by the players, which I've always think is just interesting perspective. We always hear analysts talking about this guy's rated here and ranked there, and it's kind of interesting to see what the players think, because sometimes I think that they have a lot more respect for guys that maybe as fans and as media we oversee. And of course, other times when people have pointed out, I mean, a couple of years ago, Blake Bortles was like ranked like 56th or something like that. So they get it wrong a little bit too. But it's interesting. There's been a couple people, a couple names that I think kind of pop out on the list. For me, at least, I mean, I was stunned to see Josh Allen rated.
I was pretty surprised. Not a diss to your boy Josh Allen, but I was pretty surprised. I was pretty surprised.
No,
But
no,
not in the bad way. I think he'll get there. I was surprised that he got that recognition, honestly.
yeah, and I think that I think kind of confirms, I think, to a lot of people who say he sucks, say he's bad, and I'm not sitting here saying that Josh Allen is some finished product that's going to be a great, you know, who's already a franchise quarterback. I know he's got a lot of work to put in, but to see him by his peers ranked 87th, I mean here's some of the names. I mean they put him ahead of. I mean they put him ahead of Frank Clark, Jason Kelsey, Allen Robinson, Darius Slay. I mean these are some legit
Good ball players.
ball players
Yeah.
exactly, and they put him ahead of them, which is I think shows just what they think of Josh Allen, um, overall. So, that definitely popped out to me. Just as a Bills fan, of course. I know Keenan Allen was talking
Yeah,
a lot
yeah.
on Twitter, was not happy where he was rated. He really does believe that he is the best receiver in football.
Okay, wait, no. Let me ask you then. How would you rank those four receivers? He said that he's better than Tyreek Hill, Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans. How would you rank those four receivers?
I think Tyreek Hill's the best.
Okay, I agree with you there.
I think he's the most explosive football player currently, just overall.
Yeah.
I think that I would take Mike Evans over Keenan Allen because Evans is such a specimen. They don't
Yeah.
make receivers like him. Then I take Keenan Allen at 3, and then Chris Godwin. That's who I think I'd rate them.
I actually kind of annoys me that I actually agree with you. I was hoping for some debate right there.
Debate. I think that now. I think that Keenan Allen. Listen, Keenan Allen's an unbelievable route runner.
Yeah.
Good hands.
And I
I think
honestly, I kind of see, like, if he's talking about route running, I see his point. Because I think he's the best route runner out of those four.
it's him or Diggs. They're both 1 or 2. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. No, out of that pool though, I think he's the best route runner.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
He was saying that he was like, yeah, like you guys are just all faster than me, but like that plays a factor, man. Like if you're fast, that's not a discredit. That's just a plus right there. So I agree with your list right there. The ranking that did surprise me, and I know that they didn't finish their top 100 yet. I think they're at 50 now. Yeah,
I think they got in the 40s.
40. They're in the 40s. What did surprise me is Todd Gurley at 51.
Yeah, that was strange.
After a very, I would say, mediocre season.
And that's also considering that Devontae Adams was at 57.
Yeah, and
I think Devontae Adams is a guy that almost doesn't get the credit he deserves. I think he's a top 5 receiver in the game.
You could certainly make that case, but they have him ranked beyond Diggs. What do you think about that?
I don't think I would put Diggs ahead of Adams currently. I want to see
touchdown machine too.
I think Diggs being the centerpiece of Buffalo's offense could put him in that sort of category, But I think right now I'd take Adams over Diggs. But I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Diggs, but yeah, Todd Gurley at 51 was the one that I was like, what? Listen, Todd Gurley, is a guy that had a lot of success in the league, and I think he is still a good player. I don't think he's trash or anything. Well, I mean, this is a guy that is certainly not.
He's not in his prime.
He's not the dynamic runner he was.
Yeah.
And for a guy that was in the headlines all season about just not getting a lot of touches, not to have him ranked, 51st is, you know, to me, which is this is something that people do say is a little bit of a problem with this list that seems to happen every year is the big name carries sometimes too much weight. And Todd Gurley is a huge name. He's a celebrity in the NFL. Um, but by no means I think is he like an elite running back anymore. So that was shocking too. And I'm glad you mentioned that one because that's the one I know everyone's talking about.
You know what? Now that we're just talking about this list, I know this is a little bit of pressure, but next episode, maybe not next episode, but one of these next episodes, let's make our own top 100.
We could do that.
I'm so.
And I think we could definitely do a better one because you know who just got ranked at number 41? This one's going to surprise you.
Oh, God, what?
Jadeveon Clowney. Ranked ahead of Alvin Kamara. Ranked ahead of Tre'Davious White.
Are you
ranked ahead of Zadarius Smith and Darius Leonard?
They know that Jadeveon Clowney's still unsigned, right?
Yeah, no one wants him. No one
wants him at that price. Like, don't get me wrong, I would take him on the team. He's a good player, but not at the price that he's seeking. I mean, there's a reason that all these teams have sort of turned him down. By the way, I actually saw a rumor today. I forgot who. Someone from the Jets was on FaceTime. Was it?
It was Bradley McDougall.
Yeah, he was on FaceTime with Clowney. He said he was trying to get him to join the Jets already. I mean, we'll see about that, but I would not pay him that money, and I would absolutely not rank him at 41 nor in the top 60 probably.
And it's funny that I'm actually mentioned Bortles because now I'm looking through it. Yeah, some bad ones here. We got J.J. Watt at 45, despite the fact he didn't play really at all this season. Garoppolo at 43.
Listen, that's not great, but it's not one of the worst ones on here.
No, not one of the worst ones. Not one of the worst ones. But I think I think we could do a top 100. I think we could. It would be challenging. We would that would be a grind, but we could do it. I think.
Listen, man. I mean, we're home. We're in quarantine.
You're right. It's not like there's much going on out here other than sitting around watching sports. Basically, I mean.
Plus, I already know, Daniel Jones is number 1, so, it doesn't really.
Oh, okay, yeah. For sure.
Top 5.
No, but actually, where do you think Saquon's going to rank?
Probably not top. Maybe top 10. Probably not top 10. I'd say 13, 12, around there. Maybe the teens.
Yeah, I think he's definitely top 20.
Yeah, he's for sure top 20. I would say maybe cracks the top 10, but I don't think so.
I think that's realistic to think.
Yeah.
So, I guess, now as we wrap it up, as we like to finish all of our shows, it's talk about our own teams because our shows, we can do that. So, DeAndre Baker on the commissioner's list. Do you think that's it for him? Do you think he's done?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was done before even that, but just because Joe Judge. That's all it is. He's coming in, instilling his culture. I don't think he wants to deal with any of that stuff, especially when Baker hasn't really shown any promise. It'd be one thing if last year, he made an actual impact on the game, but he struggled a lot. He got better towards the end of the season, but for most of the season, he was struggling with the playbook, struggling in coverage, struggling in zone. Just he looked lost out there some games, and when Joe Judge is trying to instill this culture about accountability and sacrifice and teamwork and being a professional, I don't see it, man. I mean, I think he'll get another shot in the league just because he was so talented out of Georgia, but I don't see a future with the Giants.
It's funny too when you look back at that draft class because DeAndre Baker, for some people were saying that was the best pick they made.
Yeah.
In that first round.
I was very excited about it. I was very.
And man, has that pick in just a year. I mean, that's about as bad as it gets. I mean, not only did he have just a very tough rookie season, I mean, he's facing real jail time right now. He and Quentin Dunbar.
What are you doing, man?
I mean, that, and I also saw Cody Latimer too is another guy who got put on the commissioner's list who. For assault with a deadly weapon. I mean, this was a bad offseason for the NFL for when it came to abiding by the law, man. My goodness. But
when it came to
that. So, yeah, that was that was something. But well, hey, we'll see. But you'll see Joe Judge. I mean, at the same time, this is something that at least with Sean McDermott, what he did with Buffalo with this culture was also giving guys a second chance if they really were sincere about it. I mean, we saw that with Ed Oliver ultimately. I mean, good thing for him, all charges were dropped and he shouldn't be suspended, but he was supported his player and understood that there's growth. I mean, the same thing happened with Jake Fromm, who I know you were up. I'm sure killed you to see those texts because that was your guy,
Yeah,
Jake Fromm.
I loved him, man. I mean, I'm biased towards QB1, but still, I love Jake. I did love Jake Fromm.
So, we'll see. Maybe DeAndre Baker will get a second chance, but I mean, not a promising start to his career at all. After people were real excited about him in the pre-draft process.
Not at all. Not at all. What do you think about Josh Allen's ranking? Do you think it's fair overall? I know you said you were surprised, but do you think he'll get there this season?
Do I think he'll prove that he's the guy?
Yeah, to 87 at least.
I think that he will definitely improve this season for sure. I think that I would give it a 90% chance that after this season, it's like, okay, he's the guy moving forward. I'm pretty confident that he's gonna take big steps because I think with him, like his game is obviously inefficient and his accuracy has been scrutinized, a lot. Some of it I think is a little much. I think that, he's not as inaccurate as people make him out to be. I think with Josh Allen, the reason why I say that is that he's got a lot of intangibles that I think define a franchise quarterback. He's a leader. He plays his best football in the fourth quarter. I mean, he had the highest quarterback rating in the fourth quarter of any quarterback in the football in the National Football League last season. I mean, he's he tied Russell Wilson for the most game-winning drives. I mean, this guy knows how to win football games, and he'll do anything for his teammates, which is why they play their tail off for him. So he's with him, it's just continuing to improve his mechanics and just become a better football player, because I think people forget how raw he was coming out of Wyoming.
Yeah.
He's such a project, But I think with Diggs, I think that's going to be huge for him, having that caliber of a player offensively, because for 2 years it's really just been Josh Allen making plays on his own. And have a guy who can just, throw him up a jump ball and he'll go get it for you, and get open and catch the ball consistently, which was been a problem with the Bills for 2 straight seasons now, with drops.
Yeah.
I think Josh Allen is definitely going to prove that he is a legit quarterback in the National Football League. And, I know some people think MVP, but I think that's a little crazy. But I think he'll take big steps, and I think he should be in the top 100 come next season.
Okay. Before we sign off, I do want to ask you about one more thing. I am wearing this shirt right here.
Mm-hmm.
You know what this shirt is.
Mm-hmm.
Whiteout shirt for 2020. I'm praying that there is somehow a way that we could make this work. just settle things out. But we saw that the Big Ten is in conference from now on. Penn State will not be playing Virginia Tech week 2. They won't be playing any out-of-conference games. Do you think that this whole situation sort of plays to Penn State football's advantage next season? Then maybe no fans, the shortened season, and the in-conference?
That's tough.
For me, when I was thinking about it, it's nice to not have to go play Virginia Tech on the road. But at the same time, I feel like you can't tell me that Beaver Stadium doesn't play a role in helping them win some of those games. So it's going to be interesting if there's not – obviously, there's going to be limited fans if there's any fans at all. But it's going to be interesting if there's no fans.
Right, and I think that the Virginia Tech game, I actually think, aside from it just kind of being a bummer, because I think it would have been an amazing atmosphere,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
Lane Stadium is nuts,
Oh yeah,
and that was going to be under the lights, like the game of the day. Um, but the thing that I was excited about that game for Penn State was like Virginia Tech is a good team, but I mean they're not on Penn State's level, and I felt confident that Penn State was going to win that game. But the thing that I was excited about that for the team was, hey, that's early season. Go to a hostile environment, and for like those young guys, just kind of like, okay, get that like first initial like, holy cow, like this is kind of crazy, out of
yeah,
the way before you go to the big house and play Michigan, or you go to Spartan Stadium and play Michigan State and some other pretty tough places to go win football games.
yeah.
And I think that's unfortunate that if there is a season, they're going to just be thrown right in there playing Big Ten games and not kind of get those first few games to work out some kinks because let's for not forget that, like, for example, that Idaho game week 1, I mean, we were still thinking that like Ricky Slade was going to be like the number one running back, like,
Short-lived.
and like how that changed just because we saw them play and we're like, hey, Journey Brown and Noah Kane and Devin Ford are a hell of a lot better than Ricky Slade. So I think that that's gonna be unfortunate to have to go play conference games, not really kind of knowing who your team is.
Yeah,
But of course, that's gonna be the case for every
every,
team if there's a season. So you know, I think it's kind of 50-50. It goes both ways.
I agree. It's going to be very interesting. I honestly was more optimistic last week than I am now about college football. Hoping we can work something out, man. I'm wearing this for support,
Right
but
now, what are your thoughts on if it's a spring season?
it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't think the high profile players will play, which is in itself bad for college football, obviously, because the stars aren't going to be playing. And also just in terms of next season, like that's a time in which athletes are recovering from the season usually. Obviously, they're getting in the weight room, just lifting, getting ready for next season. They're not hitting each other yet. It's not going to be something that they're all accustomed to. And I think it could possibly lead to more injuries and more risk in the following season. So I don't think the risk to reward ratio is like substantial enough to warrant that.
No, I agree. I think spring football would not make sense,
Yeah.
and
It'd just be weird, man.
and not to mention, like, I think that people got to like realize too, for a lot of these teams up north, like February, March are
Yeah, it's
brutal
brutal.
months to be playing football in. That's different than
Oh
like
yeah,
November, December
that's a
weather.
good point. We could not have played football last year, given the conditions in state college in the
Right. I
spring.
mean, for us, it would. I mean, in state college in March last year, I mean, every day in February it was like 20 and like just gusting wind.
Yeah,
And it's just like it was miserable, and you just it's a relent it's a different cold than what you see towards the end of the fall, which is cold but tolerable.
yeah,
And I don't think that you could tell me that players want to play in that, even though I know they like the bad weather. I don't think they want to play in bad weather every game, and also fans don't want to sit in that.
yeah,
If we're playing spring football, because fans can also come, fans aren't going to come if it's go sit in 10-degree weather with snow and wind, in the middle of February. So I agree with you. I think spring college football just wouldn't make any sense. And on top of it, like you said, the high profile players, no chance they'd suit up for that. That's to me, if they can't play it in the fall, they shouldn't play at all. That's kind of what I've kind of believe in for this season.
I agree with you. I guess we could stop it right there.
Yeah, I think that round wraps it up.
Praying, man, praying for it.
So thanks again for everyone for tuning in. We of course appreciate it, and if you haven't already, please follow us on Twitter. We are posting updates and previews and all sorts of good stuff there. Follow me and Pat on Twitter too.
Yeah,
We just
subscribe to our YouTube as well. Our brand new
right.
YouTube.
He'd appreciate any any and all support. And with that being said, no, see you guys next time.